And welcome to tonight's Town Hall with the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston. My name is Kalela Perot, and I'll be your moderator. I know some of you may be joining us for the first time, so I'm going to go over a little bit of what you can expect. Earlier this evening, several Nova Scotians received an invitation to join our conversation by phone. Those who have chosen to participate will have an opportunity to ask their questions to the Premier directly. If you are participating by phone and you would like to ask a question, please hit *3 to be added to the queue. We're also broadcasting live on the Nova Scotia Government Facebook page as well as YouTube channel. Those viewers will also have an opportunity to ask their questions. If you are watching online, you can email your questions to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. I think that just about covers it. So we have about an hour together. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and we're going to answer as many questions as we can. For those of you who are on the phones, now is the time to hit *3 to ask the Premier your questions. But before we get started, Premier, is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, thanks very much. Good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to chatting tonight and taking some of your questions. If you have a question, press *3 and get in the queue for your question. But just before we start off, we just wrapped up last week a successful session of the legislature where we passed the province's budget. So some of the items in this budget are going to change the lives of Nova Scotians. It's about $16.5 billion worth of investments in Nova Scotians and a lot of meaningful investments. But certainly for the first time in our province, we're introducing a new school lunch program for children in public schools. That was started in September with, I think, grade 5 and below as we start to roll that out. We know kids learn better when they aren't hungry. And for some, school may be the place where they get their most balanced meal of the day. So this program will start rolling out to the younger students in the fall, and it will grow from there. In addition to the lunch program, this budget invests in several approaches to support Nova Scotians in different ways. Many Nova Scotians suffer from chronic illness. One of the most common is diabetes. This budget will help many Nova Scotians who are living with diabetes better manage their disease and save some money. Nova Scotia will help cover the cost of sensor-based glucose monitors and remove the age cap on the insulin pump program. These are significant changes, especially considering a person with diabetes, living with diabetes, can pay up to $4,000 a year for sensor-based glucose monitor, or over $6,000 for an insulin pump, and maybe another $4,000 for supplies. So you can see how they would add up for sure. This is an important investment in the health of more than 4,000 Nova Scotians. Diabetes can be a life-changing experience. It can severely impact quality of life, so the cost of equipment and supplies to manage diabetes is significant, and it's not like you can just do without. So we've earmarked $7.2 million in this budget to support those living with diabetes, and we're proud of that investment. About 5.9, almost $6 million of that will be on the investments in the sensor-based glucose monitoring program with people with type 1 and type 2. We're also setting up a new income-based program to roll this program out. Coverage will be available through your existing pharmacare programs to try to make it easy for you. This is a long overdue program in our province. Many Nova Scotians living with diabetes will no longer have to prick their fingers multiple times a day. This is a process that can be uncomfortable and painful, especially for children. So instead, with the sensor-based glucose monitor, will be accessible to people, and it can show them in real time on their smartphone their glucose levels. This is a really important thing. So it's all part of the more healthcare faster and in the palm of your hands. So we're also expanding the pump program, as I mentioned, by removing the age cap. And if you're 26 and older, you'll soon be able to apply for the program. There are over 100,000 Nova Scotians impacted overall that are living with diabetes. So this will help. The budget is also filled with other items that can help as well. And most importantly, I just want to touch on before we take calls is a budget item that will put more in your pockets. The budget included the largest tax cut in Nova Scotia's history. The cost of living is top of mind for many Nova Scotians as we experience some of the highest inflation in over 30 years, and just the cost of living in general is so high. So the number one ask by Nova Scotians in this year's budget consultation process was for tax relief, and we're going to deliver it. Starting on January 1st, 2025, Nova Scotians will feel that income tax relief when they see less money coming off their paychecks, so they can have more in their pockets. and that's because provincial income tax brackets will be indexed, and personal tax amount will also be indexed, and there are several other non-refundable tax credits will be indexed as well. All these will lower the income taxes that people pay, and it means more for you. So I'm looking forward to chatting about some of that and anything else on your mind, really. So if you have a question, just press *3, and happy to take your questions tonight. But really, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Premier. We're going to go to our first question now, and that's with Kevin in Mosher River, who has a question around cell service. Kevin?
Yes. Good evening, Premier Houston. I was wondering if you could give me some advice on perhaps what I could do in the future. I have experienced when Nova Scotia, we have no power, that we have no no phone service and no cell service at all. And I've had 2 incidents where my wife had to be rushed to the hospital, and fortunately we had power at that time. But if the power goes out, we have no landline, and we have a cell phone, but we have no service here. So I was wondering what possibly could be done, if anything.
Yep, thank you, Kevin, for sure. And this is a really important issue. Of course, having good cell service is essential for Nova Scotians. It's just you need it for so many things. It's a matter of public safety as well, as you mentioned there. We are making a significant investment to try to get cell coverage across the province. This has been a long-standing thing. We're making an investment right now that's in the works now, going through the various technical studies and the requests for tenders. But we're prepared to make an investment of over $47 million to make sure that you have that cell service. This is something that I know is so important. I think we've made relatively good progress on the internet side of things with the Starlink program. It helps people cover the cost of initial Starlink setup. So I think we've done pretty good. It's getting better for sure on the internet, but there's still big gaps in cell coverage, and it is a public safety issue. I hear you loud and clear on that, but I want you to know that it's an active file, and I think we're all a little impatient upon it, and on this file, including myself. But the investments are being made, and we'll make sure that we can get coverage to you as quickly as possible. Thank you for reaching out with that, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, we have Barb in Halifax, who has some questions about healthcare improvement. Barb, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Barb. Maybe, I don't know if we might have lost Barb. Maybe we can come back to Barb.
Yeah, all right. So we'll move along to Darlene Smith, who has a question about rent.
Yes. I was wondering what you're going to do about the crazy rent increases. People cannot afford to live anymore. Groceries are high enough, gas, taxes, and this year they allowed the increase to go to 4% instead of 2%. Why was that? Do you know?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Darlene. This is incredibly important question, as you say, with the cost of living and the pressure it's putting on families with inflation and just the general cost of life. For sure, we know that a number of people are struggling. So we do have the rent cap in the province, as you noted. It's changing as it kind of phases off. The rent cap was in place to really protect tenants and recognize the pressures that people are under. But it had some other consequences as well. And when the rents are capped and the costs that landlords were experiencing around power and other utilities and upkeep and stuff like that, when the rents were capped, it kind of had some issues around investments in maintenance and just but the real impact it had is when a unit changed hands and the rent was put to market, it was really causing some incredible increases on new tenants as they went in. So all this to say is we're constantly trying to find a balance where we can support renters for sure, and also the landlords as well. So the cap that's been in place was in place for a few years. It's part of a suite of protections that were there to support people. But we also want to make sure at the same time that there's more units available to rent. So we're building more housing stock. But phasing out the cap, increasing it this year a little bit, it's just it's all part of trying to find the balance. And I know that it puts some pressure on tenants as well. But at the same time, if we don't try to find that balance and we see units disappear off the market, maybe somebody sells a unit and it's no longer rented because somebody moves into it. So we know that we have to build more housing stock. There's a lot of programs to get more housing stock built. Because the answer to the housing crisis, the shortage of rental units and housing across the spectrum, the answer to that is more housing stock. We need to build more for sure to balance the better balance of the supply and demand of the market. So, but I do want to say this. So any renters who feel that they are being treated unfairly should definitely contact the Residential Tenancies Board. So there is that option as well. But I certainly know the pressures on Nova Scotians and certainly on renters. But we're just trying to find that balance.
Thank you very much, Premier. A reminder to those on the phone that now is the time to press *3 if you'd like to be added to the queue to ask your questions. Next, we're going to Gary, who has a question about pharmacists and their scope to prescribe prescriptions. Gary?
Yeah. I just want to say for the previous speaker there, I'm not trying to be political, but we let in too many people at once. That's why, and it's not really the Premier's fault. They had this influx of immigrants, which are good people, but we didn't have nowhere to put them. So, I live in Highfield. My rent was $850. Now it goes up. If you move in now, this apartment, it's $1,600 for the same thing. So it's quite a bit. So, anyways, and I think you're doing a great job. But my question was about pharmacies. Them being able to prescribe different medications. I find this really working out for me. Like them being able to give me my puffer and all these kind of stuff. Is there, are they looking in, I don't even know if that's your territory, are they looking into being able to do that more, or is that something, that you can talk about, or that?
Absolutely. So thank you, Gary, for that. So a couple, just on the housing thing, as the population growth, I think if you go back, there wasn't really enough planning for the population growth that was coming. So we've taken on that challenge with a housing plan, so more housing units and stuff. So, but planned growth is the kind of growth we want for sure. So, but on the scope of practice, so you've identified pharmacists, and I'm glad that's helping you out for sure. But scope of practice, allowing people to do what they're trained. We've really expanded the scope of practice across healthcare professionals, pharmacists for sure, physiotherapists, some nurses. And we did this all through it's all part of the Patient Access to Care Act, which we passed in the legislature about a year ago, I guess. And the Patient Access to Care, it does a couple of things. One thing it talks about is common sense credentialing. So a healthcare professional, a doctor, trained in the UK, good enough for the UK, good enough for Nova Scotia, and identifying jurisdictions where we could accept their training and their experience and bring them to Nova Scotia, where they can work right away. But the second part of that was the scope of practice. And so I always say, imagine being a plumber, working somewhere else, even in Canada maybe, and saying, well, you can come to Nova Scotia and be a plumber, but you can't work on sinks. Like, that's kind of what it was like for a number of our healthcare professionals. So with the Patient Access of Care Act, we've expanded scope and said if you're trained to do it and you can do it safely, then we want you to do it here. And pharmacists are an obvious example. Right now, our pharmacists in Nova Scotia have some of the widest scope of practice in the country. They're trained to do a lot of things. We're allowing them to do it, and it's working. And so between the scope of practice for pharmacists and other healthcare professionals, put on things like virtual care appointments, the mobile clinic that goes around. All of these are new access points for people to go. So when you go to the pharmacist and you get just what you need, that's what we want. That's a great thing. But if you look at all the different access points we've added, it's almost 60,000 new appointment opportunities every single month. So pharmacists are some of those, virtual care are some of those, mobile clinics some of those, urgent treatment centers some of those. almost 60,000 new appointments a month. So it's all part of the many hands make light work philosophy that we have, just allowing people to do what they're trained to do. So we're seeing success with the pharmacies for prescription renewals, for treatment of a number of minor ailments, for some testing. And I just want you to know we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going to make sure that we fix healthcare and make sure that people have access opportunities, and they will be in new and innovative ways. The pharmacy clinics that we started here in Nova Scotia, that started in Nova Scotia, you're seeing them pop up in other provinces now because people are seeing what we're doing. We're leading the way on so many fronts. But there's more work to be done, and we'll continue to do it. But I really appreciate that question about kind of scope of practice and opportunities for healthcare professionals to do more to support Nova Scotians.
Great, thank you. It is now time to go to a question that we received over email. This is from Angel, and their question is, some municipalities are fighting residents on creating backyard suites. How will the provincial government encourage the municipalities to work with the citizens of the province to create multi-generational homes and let people age in place?
Thank you, Angel, for that. This is an important question because as we talked about, even in the context of rental units, the solution to the housing crisis, which the housing crisis shows up in many ways. It shows up in rents. It shows up in lack of affordable housing in general, just opportunities to buy a home. The solution to the housing crisis is more housing. So we've tried to focus on more housing of all types: affordable housing, public housing, market housing, and then of course student housing with student residences at some of the NSCC campuses. So all of these are part of the overall housing stock solution. We need more of it, right? So backyard suites absolutely can play an important role in that. And to your point on, intergenerational families and those types of relationships that are so important. So we're in support of backyard suites for sure. We actually have come up with a program to support those that are building backyard suites, and people can apply for. It's up to $40,000 in some instances for help with the construction of a backyard suite. So we'll work with the municipalities on their zoning and their bylaws that may be unique to that municipality, but absolutely backyard suites. We're in support of those. We have a program to help finance them, and we will continue to work with municipalities for where they're appropriate for a family, for a community. We want to be there to support their construction. So thank you for that question, Angel.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we have a question from Ron, who's in Halifax. Ron's question is about income tax and tax bracket adjustments for inflation. Ron, you can go ahead with your question.
You didn't record. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Houston.
Hi, Ron. How are you?
Okay. I think you're doing a good job, but I think on the income tax, over the years when the Liberal government put it in, they froze all those brackets that were on income tax. And when you got in power, you carried it on through. And I noticed in the last budget, you mentioned that you were going to index them the end of this year for next year. And I'm wondering if that index is only going to be the rate at the time the rate is set in this fall for next year, or if you're going to add a little bonus to that to give a little lift and bring those brackets into a larger settlement than just the regular inflation one to help reduce some of these taxes that we're paying.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. This is a really important question, and we have high income tax rates for sure in this province. And of course, when you add on a sales tax and property tax and everything, there's only one taxpayer that pays all these, no matter the level of government. So I understand the burden of the taxes on our citizens, and it is high for sure. And we want to get to a place where we can really reduce the tax burden, particularly the income tax burden. But right now it's been a time where we see the need to invest in Nova Scotians, to invest in the healthcare system, to invest in the education system, to invest in Nova Scotians. So we have big big needs. We passed the budget. The budget has a deficit. So even for this year, we're predicting that we're going to spend more than we take in. But we're doing that because we know that these investments are necessary. So on the other side of the equation, when we reduce taxes and we reduce our revenue, do we cut back on services? This is the struggle of governing. We're trying to decide to find that point where it's fair in the level of service we can deliver and the level of taxation. So ultimately, we want lower taxes overall for sure. And I believe that our province is on a real good path. We really are. We're taking steps along the journey. We're getting to a place where I know that eventually we'll be able to really make meaningful tax reform. We're not there yet. But we are there where we can take the first little inch, the little tiny step. And as you said, in the budget, we have finally addressed the issue of indexing the tax brackets. So this was overdue, and it is a significant first step. And the way it's contemplated right now is that it would be based on a rate of inflation. There'll be some calculations in there. I don't know that we get the little bonus that you refer to, but maybe. I mean, I would say to you that I want to get there, and if the finances of the province allow for that to happen, then absolutely we'll do that. But we won't. We can't forget the need to invest in the healthcare system and in the education system and in Nova Scotia. So what I would say to you is I absolutely agree with you on the need to reduce our overall tax burden, and I want to get there, and we're driving along that path. We're not totally there yet, but this first step that we're taking is meaningful. So I hope that gives you some comfort as to where my thoughts are anyway.
Thank you, Premier. A lot of really great questions this evening. Next, we're going to Trudy Thompson, who is going to be asking a question about the newly announced volunteer program. Trudy, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Hi, Trudy. I'm great.
Okay. As you know, I live in Maitland, and I guess I have a concern about the new volunteer program and as a new entity. And what I'm reading is that if government employees volunteer to go to the registry and they get called up, they will be guaranteed their wages. And then I look at my community where we have a total volunteer fire department. Nobody's paid. Same with the search and rescue. They spend numerous hours even fundraising in order to buy the equipment they need. And if they go to a fire, to a car accident, because they're the first responders in our rural communities, there's no guarantee they will even get paid by their employer, depending on their employer. And why do you have to create a new entity when you go to the volunteer fire departments, the search and rescues, and they can look around their communities, can create a ledger saying who has what equipment, who may be available, and do that. Sometimes I think it's almost a slap in the face for the volunteers within our rural communities.
Yeah,
and by creating another one and spending money on those, when rather than them continually fundraising to buy their own equipment, some more resources could be put into them, and they could create the registry for you.
Well, listen, Trudy, thank you for this. It gives me an opportunity. So the Nova Scotia Guard, we have great respect for our volunteer organizations across the province. You mentioned volunteer firefighters, search and rescue teams across the province. We've been very supportive of the volunteer fire departments. The $10,000 grants, and just trying to do everything we can to support them. We're not looking to replace them. We're not looking to minimize them in any way, shape, or form. What the Nova Scotia Guard is about is just about preparation and organization of the existing volunteers and groups that are around the province. So if there was an emergency in some part of the province, and we knew that we needed a search and rescue team, and we called that a search and rescue team from another part of the province that wasn't impacted and said, hey, would you come to this? Would you come here and help? The answer would be yes, 100% it would. So the Nova Scotia Guard is just to try to really understand what resources we have in the province, people, equipment, whatever, so that an incident commander in a highly stressful situation dealing with an emergency can very quickly turn to the Nova Scotia Guard and say, hey, we need 50 people to shovel snow. Do we have people that can shovel snow that meet the fitness requirements, in a certain area? Can we call them up? And it's not, it won't be making 15 calls or 50 calls. It would be calling to the Nova Scotia Guard. Hey, we need a D8 dozer. Where do we have those? Can we call on those? So it's all about supporting one another, supporting Nova Scotians in a time of crisis, in a time of emergency, calling up on the Nova Scotia Guard. So it's all about, at the moment, and we've had some terrible, like, devastating loss of life in the floods and the fires, for sure, the loss of property there, and it's just uprooting lives, and Hurricane Fiona and snowstorms, and this is we're going to have more of them because the climate is changing. We'll have more of them. So now we're just trying to make sure that we are prepared and we know where the people are, and we know where the assets are, and we can call them up, and they'll come and help. So the way we did this is we tabled a piece of legislation to signal our intent to have meaningful discussions with Nova Scotians across the province over the summer, and we will do that, and we will listen carefully to make sure we get it right. So there's a lot of expertise in the province. We're going to listen carefully to what the Nova Scotia Guard should look like, what it can look like. We'll talk about per diems. We'll talk about compensation, because right now when the disaster strikes and we have to reach somewhere else, whether it's another province or another organization outside the province, we pay for that. So maybe if we have the resources in our province and we know, then we could put that funding back into an organization within our province. So this has incredible potential. It will help with our preparedness. It will help with our response time, and it will give every single Nova Scotian the opportunity to be part of this, because not everyone, maybe not everyone can shovel snow, but maybe they can make sandwiches to support those that are, or maybe they can make phone calls, or so the Nova Scotia Guard, I think, is a really important step for Nova Scotians to support, for Blue Nosers to support other Blue Nosers. But absolutely, it's to add to what we have, not to take away. I'll do a call this weekend. I'm hoping to do with volunteer fire department, search and rescue, just organizations across the province, to kind of send a message that we're all in this together. We're not trying to minimize anyone. We're trying to add to it. So I'm really, really pleased that you raised this tonight, Trudy. Thank you for that.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we're going to go to Ken, who's in Cape Breton, and Ken appears to have an invitation for the Premier. Ken, you can go ahead.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello.
Welcome. How are you?
Premier, this is non-political. I'm Ken Cunningham, and my father was in the legislature in 1945 to 1955, CCF, and him and Michael McDonald, and Michael was there 22 years.
Okay. That's impressive.
I'm inviting you. It's non-political when you come to Cape Breton. I was brought up. My father bought the Marconi property, and I was brought up in the big Marconi house.
Wow.
And if you and your wife or any of your children, anytime you might be down and get a little break chance, just call me, and I'll arrange so you can go through the Marconi house. And then at Marconi Towers was the first radio station, VAS.
Right.
Now, most of the buildings in that, they took the towers down years ago, but most of the buildings in that are all gone now. They're dilapidated. But I just thought you might be interested. It's non-political, but I follow politics, and my trunks are full of politics and elections. I followed it for probably 45 years.
Well, keep following it, buddy, because it's an important thing. But listen, I really appreciate the invite, and definitely thanks to your father's service is important to our province. So we're thankful for that. But I would let's look for an opportunity when I'm down there to do a tour. Our province is just filled with these beautiful little treasures, historical treasures, and every time I can experience one of those, I go away a little bit better. So I certainly appreciate you reaching out tonight, and appreciate the invite. And if we can make it work, we'll make it work for sure. But thanks for extending the hand. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. Switching topics now, again, back to healthcare. We're going to Don Gay, who has a question about the new healthcare record announcement. Go ahead, Don.
Yes, I have a question on this new program to have our health records sent by our doctors to the government. My question is, are these my personal records, and can I opt out to have my doctor send my files to this program? We aren't privileged to have a computer or cell phone capabilities, and I would like things to stay as they are now. Private.
Thank you, Don, for reaching out. It's a topical point for sure, and I'm definitely happy to have the opportunity to maybe address some of the concerns and some of the misinformation that's out there about that. What we really want is we want you to have your record. You know, we've seen in the province, you don't have to think back too far when, you know, a doctor leaves or closes up shop, and many of my constituents had called me over the years and saying, I have to spend $250 to get my records. Well, we actually want you to have your records in your hand in real time. That's what we're trying to do. And we have a pilot happening right now through the app, Your Health NS app. This is our healthcare app, which it's got almost 235,000 downloads. I think people are using it, and it's helpful, and they like it. But there is one pilot where there's about 10,000 Nova Scotians who do have access to parts of their healthcare record already through this pilot. It's been going on for a few months. And I have to tell you that the response to this pilot has been remarkably positive. 98% of the people in the pilot who access their records say that it was helpful and that they would do it again. I've also heard from doctors who have said how helpful it is. One doctor shared a story with me that they asked a patient who was in front of them, have you had this? And it was a vaccination that you would normally get as a child or something. They wanted to know if this person had it. Well, pretty hard to remember. I mean, don't ask me which ones I had and when I had them when I was in grade school. But the person said, well, I don't know. I'd have to check. And the doctor said, well, do you have the app? Can you look on the app? And just in real time pulled it up and could see the doctor could get the information they needed because that person had their record in their hands. That's an immediate response. So we want you to have your record. Yes, you can opt out of that. There'll be a way to do that. But I would encourage you to just have an open mind about having your own records in your hands and having the power and what you could do with that to have have additional control over your own healthcare and health outcomes. But I want to be very clear that that the Minister of Health, I'm not, the government is not looking for your personal health information. There are laws to protect that, but we want you to have it. So what we're talking about is the way to get it from the doctor to you as through technology. But I really appreciate you asking the question, and I think as healthcare, as the delivery of healthcare changes, many people will want their record in their hand for a number of reasons, and that's what we're trying to get for them. So I really appreciate asking the question, though.
Thank you. We are now going to switch to a brand new topic for the evening. We're going to Coran from Maitland, who has a question about the carbon tax. Go ahead with your question.
Premier?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, sir. Not too bad. Listen, I'm calling about that the carbon tax. Why is it so many premiers against the carbon tax? There's 80% of the people in Canada that support the carbon tax and 20% against. That check mightn't seem too much to a lot of people that's working for the government and that kind of stuff, but it means a lot to the lower end people, eh? I just don't understand it myself. Why so many people get into the government as against the carbon tax?
So thank you for this. It's an important question. The parliamentary budget officer who looked at the data said most Nova Scotians would pay more out in a carbon tax than they would get back in the form of a check. So you may be in the category that you're getting more from the check than you're paying out. You may be in another category where you think you're getting more from the check than you're paying out. There's many categories that people could be in. But I would tell you this, on balance, a system where Nova Scotians pay out in the tax and pay out in the tax when they get gas and when they buy something, and they keep paying in the tax, so that maybe some way down the road the government can send them a check back to make them whole or give them a little bit more. That's not a good system. I would just rather leave it in the hands of Nova Scotians instead of taking it in the first place. So the Parliamentary Budget Office says most people, I know politically the politics of it is the federal government will try to want people to believe that, well, this is a moneymaker for you. You get more in, you'll get more back than you pay in. That's just not the reality that I see across Nova Scotia. And the reason I don't see it as a reality for most Nova Scotians is the carbon tax has a significant impact on the price of gas. And most Nova Scotians, they have to drive. It's okay maybe in Toronto or Montreal, maybe you can jump on the subway. You don't have to drive. You can get public transportation. You can take a bus. That's just not an option for most Nova Scotians, especially in the rural areas. And it's not an option for most Nova Scotians to bike to work or to put the kids on the back of the bicycle and pedal off to hockey practice or to ballet or something. It's not an option. You have to drive and you have to heat your home. So the carbon tax at its core is designed to change behaviors, to get people to do less of something, to get you to drive less. But if you can't drive less, then all you're doing is paying more in a tax. So I agree that the climate is changing. We've seen that in this province. And I know that there'll be more disasters and there'll be more impacts from climate change. So I agree. And I agree that there is a role for the government in preserving our planet. So we've put a plan forward to the federal government. We'll put two. We put one before that was called Better Than a Carbon Tax. Now, last week or the week before, we put a second one that's called Still Better Than a Carbon Tax. But in that plan, we've outlined for the federal government how we can meet their emissions targets. We can do exactly what they want us to do. And we don't need a carbon tax to get there, because the carbon tax hurts a lot of people. So if you're one of the ones that maybe benefits from the tax, but there's not a lot of taxes in this country that are money makers for people. But for some, this one might be. And if you're one, then maybe that works for you. But for the vast majority of Nova Scotians, it's not a moneymaker. It costs them money. If nothing else, they have to pay it out up front and hope they get it back later at a time when people are financially struggling. So I agree there's a lot of work to be done on climate change and preserving our planet. But we have a good way to do it in Nova Scotia. We don't need a carbon tax. We just need the federal government to work alongside with us. So I hope that gives you some insight. And certainly myself, I'm against the carbon tax. I'm for the plan we put forward. And as you've said, a number of other premiers have reached the same conclusion. Not all just PC or conservative. There's Liberal premier as well who's also against it. And so it's not on politic lines. It's just on common sense lines of what's right for citizens. Hope that helps.
Thank you. We are going to stick to the carbon tax questions right now, and we're going to B. Lewis, who's in Walbrook. You can go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Houston.
Hi, B.
It's Barbie, actually.
Okay.
I have to totally disagree with the gentleman who was just on. I don't know anybody that wants the carbon tax. I don't get anything back from it. $110 does not exactly pay what I'm paying in gas. I am so totally annoyed, and I can't use the words in front of you, of what I think of the carbon tax. I have a horrendous oil bill, and I'd love to change, but the only way I can go are solar panels, and that's a freaking fortune. So I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. My house is not designed for heat pumps, which everybody seems to love, and I then go with, if everybody goes to all this electrical stuff, what does it do to our grid, our electrical grid? It can't be designed to take all this on.
Yeah. I agree with you, Barbie, and I would say you're representative of the vast majority of Nova Scotians, just because of the nature of our province, and the need to heat our homes and the need to drive and all the things we talk about for sure. The carbon tax is punitive, but it's particularly punitive and harmful to Nova Scotians when we have a plan that can meet the emissions if the federal government will just work with us. So look, we'll continue to, we submitted the Prime Minister asked the premiers who are against it to submit a plan. We did that right away, and it's a meaningful plan. It's over 250 pages. It's comprehensive. Now, the Prime Minister said he'll take a look at it, or his team will take a look at it. So we're hopeful that they do, because the carbon tax is not the answer. But fighting climate change is necessary, and we're willing to do that, and we have a plan to do that can do it without the carbon tax. So I'm with you on this one, and we'll continue to make the points to the federal government about why we don't need a carbon tax, and we just hope that they'll listen. That's what we'll do. But we'll keep making those points on your behalf. I promise you that.
Great. Now we are going to Terry, who's in Halifax, and they have a question about teachers. Terry, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Premier. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Terry. I'm fine, thank you.
My question, Premier, is teachers have had to withstand the previous Liberal government, and now, unfortunately, it seems like your government is not really enjoying the collective bargaining process, and we'd like to, we would hope for a better relationship. And I've been teaching for 25 years, and I'm seeing a lot of teachers leaving the profession or not starting it because of the conditions right now, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for what you do day in and day out, and certainly have great respect for what you do. And I was in a school yesterday talking to teachers. We know. We understand and hear the challenges for sure. We do want to work with teachers. We do want to support, and certainly we do have respect for you. We've tried a few things, I would say, to try to address some of the working conditions, the classroom conditions, and be supportive of you. We've done a couple of reach outs to teachers for ideas on how we can, how we can make things better. We got some good feedback, and there's a bunch of pilot projects going across the province where somebody said, hey, why don't we do this? And we said, yeah, why don't we try it? So there's a number of pilot projects that are happening right now. I don't think we've done a particularly good job of communicating that broadly to teachers, but we're working on that now. And some of those pilot projects, I've heard back from teachers that I know that would say, well, that's kind of common sense. I do that anyway. That's not groundbreaking. But some are, that's a foundational skill that students need, and that's a really interesting project you have there. So it goes across the spectrum. But I only share that because I want you to know that we hear the cries for help. We'll try to meet those cries, those pleas for help in ways that we can. And at the same time, obviously, the collective bargaining process is happening. They're at the table now. If you feel like that's not happening in a meaningful way or in a fair way, I certainly would apologize for that. It is happening at the table. I believe in collective bargaining, and I do believe that our government has shown that we are supporters of collective bargaining. We're not running to the legislature to legislate people back to work. We're actually sitting down and negotiating fair deals, tough but fair deals. We negotiated a deal with nurses. We negotiated a contract with paramedics. We negotiated a contract with with doctors, physicians. We've negotiated a number of contracts, and we will continue to do that. But we have to do it together. The best way forward is working together. But I hear the frustrations. We'll kind of, I'm personally focused on trying to address those frustrations, as is the minister, as is our entire team. Last week, I'd asked caucus members to kind of reach out to the province, reach out proactively to teachers and educators and those people in the school system, and say what can we be doing. The negotiation piece, that has to happen at the table. We have to leave that at the table. I have great faith in the ability for that to work out to a fair place. But there's lots of other things we could be doing together, and that's our goal, is to work together to support best outcomes for students in a way that is respectful of teachers and works with teachers. So I really appreciate you reaching out. I don't want you to get discouraged on the bargaining process. It is a process, and I'm not part of that bargaining team, but I know that bargaining has some twos and fros and backs and forths, and there's a little bit of posturing sometimes from different sides, but at the very core of it, I don't want you to lose faith. I want you to look at the contracts we have been able to negotiate as an indication that we bargain in good faith, and I assure you we will, for sure.
Thank you, Premier. As we're nearing the end of the hour, we have time for one more question, and that will be from Wayne, who is in Cape Breton. Wayne's question will be about budget, taxes, and paychecks. Wayne, you can go ahead.
Yes, hello. My real name is Bradley Matheson. I'm just wondering, are you conservative or liberal, NDP? Just a quick question right there before I even start.
Am I what?
What party are you with?
I'm a progressive.
You with what?
Progressive conservative. PC.
Oh, okay, perfect then. Yeah, well then, I think that the message should get out a lot more about. If you think about how much money they spent in housing already. They built, 11,000 homes, and it would have cost, if you do the math, $16 million for each home. Where's the rest of that money?
So, is that the question?
When it comes to taxes, it's absolutely ridiculous for anybody to even dare want to work overtime when they're grabbing back at least 80 cents off every dollar. What's going to be done about that? It's just, this whole system is absolutely backwards. I know that you're trying your best. If you're, especially with the Conservative Party, then they're definitely in the right ballpark and going ahead. But you have to realize where we're coming from. We've been shit on so goddamn much from the government their entire lives. Every one of our dollars are being, the government was put in place for one reason, and that there's to better Canada. And we're sending all of our money abroad. You're helping these people. Your donations should never, ever be given to anybody. The money is supposed to be spent on Canadians equally. And when it comes here to Cape Breton, we make the least amount of money. We pay the most amount in taxes.
So,
say if I make $62,000 a year. Well, if I make under $60,000 a year, I'm the sole provider in my house. Yeah, what they were doing to me, this is exactly what they done to me. I made under $60,000 a year, okay?
Do we lose you? Maybe. Okay, so a couple of things. I don't know if we lost you or not, but so a couple of things. So absolutely, the taxation system is designed for, for the government to then take the money and invest in Nova Scotians. And for our provincial budget, you see that through healthcare for sure, through investments in housing. And sometimes when we announce a program, a pot of money for a certain program like housing, there would be a few houses at the beginning, but it doesn't mean that the whole pot get used. It gets allocated out over time. So just a caution on the average cost per unit, because it still could be a bunch of money left in the pot that hasn't been taken out yet, just as a general discussion. But we know that as we have incredible opportunities in this province. This is a beautiful province and so much potential, but we have challenges. in healthcare and in housing and in some other areas and in some of our infrastructure stuff. So I would guess I would just say that, we'll try to be honor your wishes on being kind of smart with the investments we make on behalf of Nova Scotians. We'll make investments on behalf of Nova Scotians. We won't get them all perfect, but every time we make an investment in Nova Scotians, we're trying to do the right thing, and we'll continue to do that to make sure that life is more affordable for Nova Scotians, and certainly taxation is part of that. It's come up a couple times tonight. So I appreciate the sentiment, and certainly can feel the frustration. And I want you to know that I hear that, and I take it very seriously.
Thank you very much, Premier. That does bring this evening's town hall to an end. It's all the time we have together. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.